Ankita Mandal, Assistant Professor of Law, Hidayatullah National Law University. I welcome you all virtually to today's panel discussion. Gender gaps is a real problem in all fields, including intellectual property laws. It not only leaves countless brilliant ideas and untapped minds, but also affects our collective ability as a society to develop cutting-edge technologies for modern world problems. WIPO this year is celebrating the can-do attitude. Through their theme, Women and IP, Accelerating Innovation and Creativity. To celebrate World IP Day in theme of WIPO's agenda, the Research Center for Innovation and IP Laws HNLU is hosting this panel discussion on gendering intellectual property laws. We have with us our eminent panelist, Professor Dr. Sunanda Bharti ma'am from University of Delhi and Miss Latha Nair ma'am, partner K&S Partners. We also have among us our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Sir, Dr. Professor V.C. Vivekanandan, who is our, if I may say, in-house IP expert having more than 3 decades of teaching and research experience in intellectual property fields. We also have among us students and faculties of HNLU and some other participants. I, on behalf of HNLU, welcome you all to today's panel discussion. Now, briefly towards the profile of our panelist, Professor Dr. Sunanda Bharti ma'am has around 18 years of teaching and research experience at Law Center 1, University of Delhi. She is currently doing an international project, Rishi, Resources for Internalization of Higher Education in India, funded by the European Commission. Ma'am is also a certified professional mediator and team leader editorial board for LexisNexis Butterworths India. A frequent writer on IP issues in various platforms, particularly Spicy IP, where we keep reading ma'am's articles. Ma'am writes on IP issues and contemporary legal issues of social relevance. I welcome you, ma'am. We also have with us Advocate Latha Nair ma'am, partner K&S Partners. Ma'am is a graduate of NLS Bangalore and advises clients on aspects of prosecution and enforcement of trademarks, copyright, and GI laws. She has been assisting the government of India in matters of protection of well-known GIs like basmati rice, Darjeeling tea, etc., and has also represented interest of proprietors for foreign GIs like Scotch whiskey, Irish whiskey, cognac, and many more. She is a member of numerous international bodies like INTA's Publication Committee, International Wine Association, and a recipient of many awards recognizing her as who and who of IP. I welcome you, ma'am. I now request my colleague, Professor Garima Panwar, to continue with today's agenda.
Thank you, ma'am. I now proceed to giving a brief of the entire program. We'll first start with the welcome address by the opening remarks, and then the address by the first resource person, Professor Dr. Sunanda Bharti, and then by Ms. Latha Nair. And as I proceed to the next, I welcome Professor Dr. V.C. Vivekanandan, sir, for the opening address. Sir has 3 decades of teaching and learning and research experience in the legal education and has served at NLS Bangalore and Nalsar, Hyderabad. He is also the founding faculty and dean for School of Law, Bennett University and IIT Kharagpur. Sir, over to you.
Thank you, Garima. So again, I formally welcome Professor Sunanda Bharti and Ms. Latha Nair for this program. And I said I was very much knowing Latha from the NLS days and Professor Sunanda Bharti in IP circles. And so today, in fact, I was trying to persuade Devnita that there should be a all-women program in a way, right? But they said that protocol that a vice chancellor has to be around and say a few words. So it's not an address; it's more a remark. So if you really look at the theme of WIPO as well as today's our topic of gendering intellectual property, I would say one level of analysis, modern science is an institutionalized, uh, I would say, a megalith or a monolith. This institutionalization is also a globalization, which I would say it's a few hundred years of university system and then investor-driven huge companies, R&D, all that stuff. Prior to this, also science was there. Prior to this, innovations were there. Prior to this, people were getting excited about many things. But why I say the pre-institutionalization and post-institutionalization, that is where the change of women as part of innovation and science changes. So it's very simple that I had a sprain last week. In fact, I'm supposed to be in Shimla today for some program. I couldn't move because of my immobility. And when I had the sprain, of course, they said, go to this doctor, that doctor. But I simply was calling my mother and asking her and said, put some hot water and salt, and at least it'll give you a relief till you go to the doctor. I call that a science. And probably both my grandfathers have passed away. And they have been my doctors when I was young. In the sense, I'm not telling that that is the best, but what I'm telling, science, understanding things, plants, and then using many things have been an inherent domain expertise of the gender called women. But the moment institutionalization took place, you also see the ecosystem of political, socio-economic things. Then obviously what happens is the role of women in general society also gets reflected in a smaller domain called science. And so I would say it has become masculine. And then once that masculinization happens, women are there, but they will be more a support system of doing few things, and then the big ticket inventions are announced by men, and the celebrities are men. And if I ask the name of one scientist, I think you'll go 150 years back to tell Mary Curie, and then still struggle to find out. So the problem, what I said is, it is not exactly what you're talking science innovation in a real quotient, but I said a very systemic thing which could have, in my opinion, shifted the whole balance and whole opportunity system, everything towards one gender. So one of the job of this team of WIPO or others to do vis-a-vis intellectual property is to bring back another gender to its natural place or even in an institutionalized place. This has major issues. It's easier said, but you should listen this from women scientists what they say, because if men scientists are going to tell, it could be even a lip service. But women scientists what to tell. I quote from two people. I hope in pandemic, one of the person who's in TV, quite a lot of commenting was, you must have heard about Dr. Gagandeep Kang. She is another India's top virologist, currently associated with Vellore Institute of Technology, and also she is a consultant with many Government of India projects. She has been regularly frequenting in TV. If you looked at that time about what is going on, she says this. I quote: "In science, there is a constant discounting." She says, "You know nothing. A room full of men will tell you, till it comes to a point when these women no longer regard themselves to be as competent as you know them to be." This is coming from the top virologist. I quote another person who's the founding director of Science Gallery of Bangalore, Janvi Palki. She says, at the end of the day, how science gets socially organized draws from how society is organized. If there are biases or misogyny for women breaching traditionally male domains, that will infiltrate in science also. She goes on to add little more practical. In all my conversation with women scientists have been repeatedly told that career timelines and life timelines do not match for women. Especially, she says, we are planning to have a baby. So this is one kind of thing I'm telling about some of the top scientists, putting it across about what I call as the rightful place gets not just because about the quotient of science, but the way the institutionalization in a particular setting happens. And that has to do with aggressive free market, which may have its merits and demerits. The demerits part is what women to be part of that, and it has its own aggressive organizational decision making. And to do that, CSIR, DSIR, if you take a survey, women scientists are majority. But if you look at how many were directors of many of these institutes, right, you will be means you have to go and do a research. So the point what I'm telling, you are celebrated, appreciated to a level. Then it comes to a kind of a notion that, well, it is the more contribution or adventurous or edge is with men in terms of taking tough decisions, they call. So obviously tough decisions important when you're investing in private and even in public institutions where there is no investment also the same thing happens. So if you really look at the whole gamut, my thing will be that probably as we celebrate this particular theme and other speakers are having their own viewpoints to tell, it is very important that we embark on a much macro view about is it possible to tinker something when the macro setting is different. But obviously, we can't wait for one great revolutionary day for the macro setting to change. So probably we may have to work a reverse engineering and show what could be there. So of course, in this pandemic period, it was women who are celebrated everywhere in many things, whether it's AstraZeneca, whether Indian scientists or that, and even in ISRO and many things, you had a kind of a silver lining, I would call it, which was not there in Indian context. It is coming up, but this needs to be accelerated. This needs to be done. So what do as law school people do? We are not exactly in core science, but we are definitely shaping what you call as a lot of regulatory mechanisms, a lot of legal nuances, which could, I would say that, bringing back the place what your grandmothers were, but they've lost now. When I say that they can come back, not in the same, what I call as home-based innovations or home-based thing I'm telling, in a modern sense, it could be brought back and maybe what I call as centers, IP centers should also think about this equity issue, right? It is not how many women are going to become millionaire by intellectual property is one part of the story. But most importantly is that women thinking about women's issue, thinking about innovations which are more dear to women, or more equitable to women. These are also again factors which are being decided in boardrooms of public and private institutions. So who will have a better decision in these boardrooms, which is more closer to women issues, etc. So there has to be some kind of thing. So this will be my what I call as not exactly an address, but a kind of thought process when I'm looking at this subject when I read as well as sometimes I think. With this, I leave it to the anchor to proceed.
Thank you, sir. I now call upon Professor Dr. Sunanda Bharti ma'am to kindly address the gathering.
Yes, thank you, Garima. I'm audible.
Yes, ma'am, you are.
So my namaskar and good evening to all. First of all, I would like to thank the Vice Chancellor, Honorable Vice Chancellor Vivekanandan ji, and the organizers of this panel discussion, Garima, Debamita, for reaching out to me, Professor Uday Shankar, and basically having this wonderful thought of organizing this panel discussion on this very relevant topic. It is an honor to share a virtual space with Latha Nair and my co-panelist, and to be given this opportunity basically to share my thoughts and insights on the subject of intellectual property. I'm doubly excited, I'll candidly confess, and I'll tell you the reason why. Because the topic today is an amalgamation of um, two subjects that I'm deeply passionate about, IP and gender. So I just hope that I'm able to provide a food for thought and also learn from the perspectives of others. Um, just to give a brief roadmap of what I intend to cover, uh, uh, basically to the audience, so that the audience gets an idea that okay, how long this discussion or this dialogue of mine is likely to be. I just have 5 brief points to share and assert, and I'll start with point number one. My point number one is I strongly assert in this, because I believe so, that we live in a weak IP regime when it comes to, particularly in the context of women. I mean, we are the world's most populated, or we are just a few months away from being declared as the most populated. And yes, we are into the 76th year of our independence, and yet we are grappling with something as basic as, disparate living conditions and social norms for women. Now, we are a developing nation, and just like other developing nations, we have definitely higher other problems. Other problems being, yes, we have higher. I don't have any data to support my, what I'm sharing here with, particularly on this aspect. But we have higher levels of female unemployment, just as any other developing nation. Would have. We have lower female education rate. So, and all these reasons and many more, which a couple of them I'll be sharing in the course of today's presentation. These are the reasons mm, which make me uncomfortable. I do not feel very encouraged or happy to talk about the role of women in IP. And if I may point out, because uh, when we talk of role, uh, I think it is relevant also to point out that whatever role we have had, and I could, as I was listening to Professor Vivekanandanji, I could sense shades of this being talked about by him as well. The point is that whatever role we have had, it is conveniently downplayed, made invisible, or overshadowed, right? Uh, with the result that we are, as of now, in the present times, we are far from reaching that stage where we can uh, come out there and proudly declare that yes, we have a level playing field. We are far, far from reaching that stage. And just to cite a few, just one example. Uh, a few days ago, and this is a personal experience that I'm sharing, not a very grand one, but just so that I can connect with what I'm trying to state here. Just a few days ago, while I was researching for a certain trademark post that I'm in the process of writing, I was researching on the word Benz, BENZ, and I bumped across a name, Carl Benz, and the various internet sources sort of gave this information to me that he is the inventor of the modern car. Another name that popped up during the research was that of Bertha Benz, and which intrigued me. And so I explored and read more about Bertha Benz, and I realized that we would not have had this modern car had this female not pitched in, without the contribution of Bertha Benz. And yet Bertha Benz is by and large an unsung hero, right? And I'm doubtful that had this situation, had this scenario happened or occurred in the present times, whether this female, Bertha Benz, would have been accorded the status of being a co-inventor very comfortably or very, very willingly, or rather than just being, projected as the wife of the inventor. So sorry for being presenting a depressing picture, or sorry for sounding cynical, but I have my doubts there, right? So just trying to put forth the status currently. So this discrepancy between genders um, is very discouraging, and when it comes to the projecting the role of women inventors, the role that women inventors have played in history, particularly in this country, uh, or rather globally. Now, I have a bit of data here. Let me just sift through these pages. Yes, so according to the latest data, latest as in just before the onset of the pandemic in 2020, the World Intellectual Property Organization, WIPO, it conducted a survey. And the result of that survey was that China was declared to have the highest number of female inventors. Okay, and you'll be surprised to note the figure, what has been claimed as highest. It is 33.1%, right? 33.1% of the total inventors were women. This is high. Okay, and this was closely followed by another country, that is South Korea. South and It is not a close following as such, because there is a sharp 10% drop there. South Korea had 23.7, so we can take it 24%. And which was followed by United States at 21.9%. So we can take it as 22%. So if uh, and then of course there were other countries, they mostly European countries. France was there, Germany was there, and India was nowhere in the picture, right? I just did a brief scan and I could not find India anywhere. And it's not very surprising, because if we look at the status of USA, if because we Indians, whether I'm not trying to criticize or something, but then we do have this, it is a fact that we do have this tendency to sort of compare ourselves with the US for every other thing. Whenever there is a developed country debate, we sort of pitch ourselves against the USA. And if the status of the USA is that it is at the level of 22%, then one can just imagine what the figure for India, if at all we have a figure, what figure we would be having for India. The point is that the overall, despite the progress, yes, we might have, and yes, we have made some progress insofar as recognition or encouragement to women inventors, entrepreneurs is concerned. But then the overall percentage of female inventors globally is still abysmally low. It is still quite low, and there is a distinct need to encourage and support more women to pursue careers in innovation, entrepreneurship, and intellectual property. That was my first point. Let me come to point number two, and that is a question which I'm often asked. And the question is, what are some of the challenges? Uh, so, so. Uh, I am I have been associated with this field for the past 15, more than 15 years rather. So people do approach me, and being a female, perhaps that's one of the reasons why this question often comes up in discussions. And that is, what are according to you some of the challenges that women face in the field of intellectual property? Okay, and over the period of these 15, 20 years, I have sort of collated the reasons. Okay, and I tell them that there are four There might be 110 reasons, but the 4 predominant reasons which I have managed to, tick, I call them FUSE, fuse. Okay. And the effect that their interplay generates becomes the fuse effect. Now, what is this FUSE, or what is this fuse? I'll it is sort of an acronym that I have invented with the help of 4 letters, FUSE, and I'll start with you. I'm keeping F aside for the time being. I'll start with you because you, according to me, is the most important challenge that we as women face and are required to overcome. U stands for upbringing. There is a fundamental flaw in which we bring our children up, in which we raise our children. Say, for instance, and this, uh, if I take a personal example, I have a daughter who is on almost a teenager. So I'm surrounded with teenagers back home, and while I'm teaching, I'm surrounded with youth, and it's almost that has been my observation. It has almost become fashionable these days, particularly amongst girls, to proudly sort of proclaim with sort of very reckless abandon that I am not so good with math, or that I am technologically challenged. Okay. It's as if they revel in this fact. And our immediate social environment, our parental attitude, it tends to reinforce this feeling, with the result that the social and psychological conditioning of females becomes such, which clearly ends up being a barrier, you know, to pursuing careers in innovation and STEM fields. So. This is a predominant and the most important challenge in my assessment. I'll come to S next. Uh, S stands for social factors. Social factors in the sense of cultural and social norms. Okay. So traditional gender roles and societal expectations also discourage women from pursuing non-traditional careers in innovation and entrepreneurship. Um, and again, to cite an example, if earlier the notion was that अरे लड़की को पढ़ाना क्यों है, इसने बड़े होकर कलेक्टर थोड़ी ना बनना है, I'm switching to Hindi, but then I believe the point has been put. So that was the old mental block. We have graduated, we have managed to dilute after a lot of struggle, managed to dilute that mental block, but we have now graduated into another mental block. We have adopted a new one. And now the mental block is that if by chance, not by chance, by the hard work and dedication of the concerned girl child, she is good with maths and science, then she has to become a doctor. So her career path is set, and any allowance for any experimentation, any maneuverability is limited. This is a new mental block, right? So which basically we are not at all concentrating on science, technology, engineering and math. STEM fields are conveniently sidelined, and if the person is good with science and math, then she has to take up medicine. That's the other end, right? So this is another challenge. uh, Now next I would want to take up E. So U I have considered. S is social factors. E stands for education. What about education? Limited access to education or limited encouragement towards STEM fields. And here again, I find it to be a very strange um, sort of paradox, or I would say the situation is kind of ironical, because year after year, at least in the Indian context, year after year, we hear, particularly when the board exam results are announced, on how girls are faring much better in terms of score and marks than boys, right? And yet, all this does not translate into more girls choosing the path of innovation and entrepreneurship. So clearly there is a certain something missing somewhere, right? When it comes to us, the next generation, encouraging the youth. So that is a challenge that we need to work towards. Uh, and now I'll take up the last letter, which is actually the first letter of the word fuse, and that is F, which stands for funding. And by funding, I mean funding, mentorship, and training. FMT is the idea. Um, the Again, this is my assessment that women entrepreneurs and inventors, they face additional hurdles in accessing funding resources, which limits their ability to develop and market their innovations. So even if they have managed to, create something, innovate something, invent something, they face additional hurdles because of a number of reasons and also the above cited factors. Now, some of us in the audience and also the uh, the organizers must have heard about, because this is WIPO theme that we are considering. So I thought I should bring in WIPO as well. So many of us here must have heard about the WIPO IP mentorship program for women inventors, right? Now, one of the objectives of the project was to provide women inventors with access to mentors, IP mentors. So the idea was certain pilot countries were recognized: Pakistan, Uganda, Mexico. So they were developing countries, and 25 women, participants were chosen. They were to be attached to a particular IP mentor so that they can understand the IP management strategies and enhance their ability to bring their inventions to the market, right? Now, this was hailed and celebrated as a very good initiative. At a certain level, I would agree that yes, it is a good initiative because at least there is an initiative on part of WIPO. But 25, 25 coming from WIPO is clearly grossly inadequate. If we are if we are wanting to aggressively promote women, as Professor Vivekanandan also said, we need to accelerate this process wherein women are given a boost, a fillip, when it comes to choosing entrepreneurship, choosing innovation, choosing IP fields. Then this 25 is a dismal figure. It's a depressing figure. Uh, More is expected of WIPO. And this is the challenge that I wanted to cite as the last one, F. And as I said, so this is FUSE, and they fuse basically together to create a monstrous challenge before women. So that was my second point. By the way, I'm dealing with challenges that we face. The third point is the uh, topic the topic that we are discussing here today, that is gendering IP law. Now, gendering IP law involves analyzing the possible differential impact of IP laws that IP laws may have on men and women, and addressing these disparities. That is what gendering IP basically means. Now, being an academician, uh, closely associated with both gender as well as intellectual property laws for the past so many years, uh, I cannot help but examine IP or IP laws through the lens of gender. And here I would like the audience to sort of compare the fields that get IP protection with the fields that do not get any IP protection, or the fields that struggle to get some sort of a protection under the intellectual property umbrella. So when we compare fields that get IP protection, say within the copyright fold, we have clearly software is there. We have architecture, we have sculpture, right? Apart from the fields literature, music, drama that are totally creative, right? So, and then we have patent laws, a different branch of intellectual property. So they get intellectual property protection. And then we have fields that do not get protection or they struggle to get protection. They are fashion apparel, fashion in the sense of stitching, sewing, silna, silai kadhai bunai types, right? So fashion, sewing, uh, cooking in the sense of recipes. Okay, we have traditional knowledge, we have traditional cultural expressions that struggle. We do not have any standalone laws or very clear cut law stating that okay, this is the protection that the IP regime is offering to such fields. And when we compare, the point that I'm trying to make here is when we compare the fields that get intellectual property protection, as I have explained right now, as I've cited right now, with the fields that do not get IP protection or that struggle to get IP protection, it becomes uncomfortably obvious, at least to me, right, that it is the endeavors of men that have been found to merit compensation and protection and not that of women, right? And this is clearly discriminatory, which we need to basically address and possibly overcome. Uh, so, uh, uh, to elaborate, fashion, cooking, sewing, TK, TCE, they keep struggling to find a foothold here and there in the hope of getting some intellectual property protection. And please note that all are female intensive fields. Okay, so this was my third point. And coming to the fourth point is another question that I'm often you know put, that okay, you cite so many problems, but how can we actually create more inclusive and equitable IP system that takes into account diverse perspectives and experiences? And to this the answer is very uh, my answer is usually very short, and I'll keep it short here as well. The answer is as simple as by supporting women inventors, by creating special programs or special beneficial, packages for supporting women innovators and inventors by providing special training, mentoring, and funding opportunities to them. That's basically the long and short of it. Uh, if so, no further elaboration actually is required. Uh, then, okay, coming to the last point that I want to highlight is why should we even bother about gendering IP? And I deliberately have placed this as the last point because I did not want to bring it as the first point. Why? Because I do not want to justify. I think it's do not want to sound as if I'm justifying as to why we should bother. This is something that is obvious, that this understanding should come to us automatically. Why should we even bother about gendering intellectual property? The answer is because women entrepreneurs bring unique perspectives and experiences to the table, which can help drive innovation and growth. Their experiences and way of dealing with things and situations is very different. I'm not, categorizing men as inferior and women as superior. It's not an inferior superior debate. It is just that uh, women entrepreneurs, they tend to act and behave differently towards situations. Okay, so and we have data to support it. So there is this let me just, yeah, Corn Ferry Research Foundation. Corn is KORN, Corn Ferry Research Foundation. It conducted a survey and found the key areas where women acted differently than men. And the 5 areas were coaching, mentoring, inspirational leadership, conflict management, and adaptation. And if we focus closely and focus honestly on these five, areas, key areas, these are actually soft skills, right? that will go a long way in developing an entrepreneurial and innovation driven or innovation oriented mindset, particularly amongst girls. And along the sides, also help in diluting the mental block that currently prevails towards STEM fields. And if I may add, also successfully break the fuse, mm, FUSE, you know, uh, pattern that I have shared a while ago. So there is a lot that I would want to cover, but I think that is primarily the crux of what I wanted to share. And so I would pause here. Thank you very much for listening to me, and perhaps questions can be addressed later. Yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Now may I call upon Latha Nair, ma'am, to kindly address the gathering.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Sunanda Bharti, for that excellent speech. Now, I mean, you've sort of raised the bar, and uh, uh, I've been a beneficiary of gender equality. But before I start, I just want to thank Professor Vivekanandan for inviting me to this event. To be very honest, I have never spoken on gender issues before. And I spoke to Professor Devdata Mandal and I asked her, could you give me some pointers? Because I am an IP lawyer. And as I said, it's a disclaimer that I have been a beneficiary of gender parity. I've been raised by a very progressive father. I'm a Malayali, and I was raised in Kerala. And as you know, most Malayali women don't sit at home. And it's definitely a more freer society for women. And that stark difference I noticed when I moved to Delhi some 25 years ago. I'm also going to peg my thoughts on 5 points. So it's probably more personal and more from my experiences from my profession as an IP lawyer in the last 25 years. So I'm going to start with my journey in intellectual property, who made it possible. It was made possible by some men in my life, both my family and my mentors. So to start with my father, I was in my pre-university course, wanting to do engineering. And then I noticed that I have a lot of my cousins who have cleared engineering. As you know, Kerala is a state with a lot of unemployment. And they've cleared engineering and they all were, without any jobs. And my father had drilled it into me. So I have 3 siblings, 2 older brothers and a twin sister. So he had drilled it into me and my twin sister that we have to find our jobs. So when I looked at my cousins who have cleared engineering, I thought that it was a mistake that I took physics, chemistry, and maths as my choice in pre-university. And then my father noticed this advertisement for an entrance to National Law School. And then he requested me whether I would like to do it. And I said yes. And it looked very exciting to be a lawyer. And that's how I am here. So he was the first man in my life who, led me to this path. Then in my 3rd year of law school, I had Professor Gopalakrishnan, N.S. Gopalakrishnan, who taught me IP. And I am going to be very grateful to him for having flunked me in my first exam, because it made me sit up and study for the repeat. And that's how I fell in love with IP. I always had it in my mind that I would become an IP lawyer because the subject was so interesting and the course material that he put together. And that was the time when India was getting into WTO, the talks had begun and all of that. So it was very interesting. And I joined my firm in 1998. And when I came for my interview, I was interviewed by 3 of my mentors in the profession. Mr. Jyoti Sagar, who he's a legend and a renowned lawyer, and Mr. Rajendra Kumar, who was my immediate boss and mentor, and Mr. Kenneth Benjamin. They were the ones who taught me the ropes in the IP profession. And what I'm going to say is that they never made me feel like a woman. They treated me like a person. There never was a time when I felt that I'm a woman and I can't do this. They had so much trust and faith in me, and the support was so unstinting. And why I'm saying this is because, but before I get into that, then later in my life came my spouse, who is again somebody who just cannot bear it if a woman is sitting at home, and is a big supporter of women. And of course, my male colleagues. I'm blessed with many wonderful male colleagues who, with whom I can share anything without worrying that I am a woman. So all this kind of created a great ecosystem for me in my journey for the last 25 years as an IP lawyer. And why I say this is because Professor Sunanda Bharti talked about social factors. I think these social factors are very important, not just when you are, growing up as a child. It is also very important in the work environment that you are in. So I have had a lot of favorable social factors and a great ecosystem to thrive. Then the second point that I want to talk about is women and IP. So this word feminism was something that I heard in a law school classroom. And before that, I didn't know what it was because I never faced any challenges. My father treated me and my sister just like how he treated my brothers. And, Professor Bharti talked about, there is this expectation in some societies that a girl will not understand maths or science. In our household, it was the other way around. We were expected to understand, and there was no question. So when I went to law school, I saw some of my classmates coming from urban families, and I was not raised in an urban family. I come from a rural area, fighting and arguing for feminism, and I just could not understand that because of my privileged background, primarily. And then I joined the profession, and in 1998, I came across an article in a magazine called Trademark World, and that article discussed about how so many in-house counsel for intellectual property are women. And it gave a logic. The logic was that the practice of intellectual property, barring litigation, is mainly deadline oriented. And it made it easy for women to plan in advance and work their way through. And it made it easy for them to balance their life. So to some, it may sound strange, but I thought it again created a nice ecosystem. It created a system where women can thrive because they're not like doctors on call. I have a sister-in-law who is a neonatologist. She's always on call. At 12 in the night, if she gets a call, she has to go. When I look at it, I feel very fortunate that I don't have to do that. But if I were in litigation, I would not be able to do that. So women in IP can be of two kinds of women who are IP litigators and women who are in IP advisory prosecution work, where the work is manageable, you can anticipate things, so it makes it very easy for women. Then I also looked at some of the data. Professor Bharti has given a lot of data, and I'm not trying to compete, but I didn't do as much research as you, but I have some data here. There is a 2020 report of WIPO which said that only 34.6% of the inventors named in international patent applications were women. And on the trademark side, the International Trademark Association did a survey in 2019 and found that only 30% of women accounted for trademark attorneys and agents worldwide. This is not a very happy figure because personally speaking, I lead a team where 50% are women. But if I speak about my firm as a whole, there are 40% women, and in the top leadership, we have 25% women. In my team, we have 60% women as leadership. That is some kind of consolation. But as a firm, I thought we could do better. And then I looked at other law firms in India, spoke to some of my friends around. The situation is the same. So there definitely is a gender disparity in the IP field. I also looked at some of the causes. So since I do not come from a STEM background, I spoke to one of my partners, Dr. Deepa Tiku. She's a patent attorney and is a partner in the firm. So I asked her, is it true that in the STEM field, women are underrepresented? And she said, yes, it is true. And there is statistics to prove that. And then we kind of discussed the causes. And she said there could be various causes. And some of the causes that she listed are very similar to what Professor Bharti spoke about. So one is that initially I thought it is possible that there are other fields, because you read a lot of newspaper reports which talk about women doing well in certain sectors. For instance, India apparently has the maximum number of women pilots. When I read it, I felt very happy. I mean, but when you look at the statistics, it's only 15% of the Indian pilots are women. And you would be surprised that even the lawyers are only 15% of the total lawyers in India. We are only 15%. And then there are some fields like nursing, teaching, etc., where you find women almost equal. And in the area of healthcare, I read that there are more female medical graduates than doctors. So it means that there is something in the system that is preventing these women from advancing their careers. So yes, fuse is very relevant. Many of the factors that you listed there are cause for that. So in that context, I would want to talk about mentorship and women in any organization. When you go in, I would like to, personally, what I received when I joined the firm, which is unstinting support and mentorship from my partners, is something that I would like women to receive. And that can happen only if something changes, at every level, including at the level of women, because in society, we can't just deal with women, we deal with men and women. And treating a woman as a person rather than a woman. And why I say this is, often my colleagues have remarked me that, Latha, you're so fearless. You walked into that thing and you said this and you didn't think about it. And it could be probably because of my upbringing that I could say something fearlessly and all the time I'm not thinking I'm a woman and I can't speak about that. But I speak about that because I've been raised as a person, I've been treated as a person. So it becomes very easy for me to speak about something without fearing about my gender limitation, if any. The next thing that I want to talk about is here today, the topic is gendering IP. I thought about it and I really could not understand what gendering IP would mean. But I think IP as a subject, I mean, when you talk about IP, we have patents, trademarks, copyrights, designs, and GIs. All these concepts can definitely be used as tools for women's development. Some can be personal development of women, and some can be societal development. So let's talk about patents. Patents can benefit women in two ways. In one way, there are inventors who are women, and if they invent something, it can be something that would benefit them personally, academically, socially, as inventors. On the other side, you have beneficiaries of these inventions who are women. So let's talk about the girls in India in rural areas. There are millions of girls in India who stop going to school after they attain puberty because they are not able to handle those 5 days in school. The families don't allow. So if there are scientific inventions that can help them make tools that would help them through those 5 days in super affordable and hygienic way for people who are coming from a certain economic strata, that is something that women can benefit from scientific inventions. Or similarly, there would be women who, after childbirth or after an illness, they are not able to contribute to their families. So if there are scientific inventions, they can be beneficiaries. Or there are women around the world, India, Africa, everywhere, who go miles and miles to fetch water. If there are inventions or there are scientific methods to help them get water, the time that they spend to go and fetch that water can be used for something else to benefit the family financially and even otherwise. So that's about patents. Then I thought about trademarks, copyrights, and designs. These can also assist women in flourishing their businesses. So last year we heard about Falguni Nair, the owner of Nykaa, becoming the first Indian woman to head a startup that became a unicorn. It means, personal acclaim for her, financial benefits for her. She supplied jobs to many, and she could even be creating a rippling effect by affecting the employees in a positive manner. And besides inspiring a lot of young women in India to become, startup entrepreneurs and, to startup ventures. Then, of course, we know about J.K. Rowling, the rags to riches story. She was a absolutely poor woman living in abject poverty. She didn't even have heating in her house, and today she's a billionaire. So that's another way IP can help women. These are all good examples because these have been very impactful financially for the women who own these rights. But then there is one IP that we all know of, which is GIs, that stand out in terms of how it can transform not just women, but whole communities. And Professor Vivekanandan talked about it, that it is not about, advancing oneself personally. It is about helping other women also. So there are studies that are being done by the Food and Agriculture Organization and the Organization for an International Network of Geographical Indications, where they conduct these projects specifically for women in developing countries and involving them in these projects and developing communities. If you look at India, we have so many GIs. Every other day you read in the paper that something is registered as a GI. But I think the question here is, registering that as a GI, has it really helped those women progress their lives? Has it trickled down to social and economic development or changing a whole community? There has to be a legal framework. In today's paper, it says that 60% of the women employed in the production of GI products in Uttar Pradesh, 60% are women actually. And while so many of those products may be registered as GIs, for them to really translate into community development, the legal framework has to be strong. In India, we suffer from what is called substandard products because the GI legal framework is not very strong to support quality products. And there really is no workmanship, or should I say workwomanship, in those things that are going out of these craftsmen. So skilling and training and mentoring of these women, and also tightening our framework is required. I was reading about Pashmina shawls. It seems till the 1990s, it was the women folk of Kashmir who used to spin the yarn for making the shawls. And in the 1990s, power looms came in, and overnight, these women were apparently deprived of their livelihood. And that was revived when they registered Pashmina as GI in 2010 or 9. Now they've kind of revived the art, and hand spinning of the yarn is one of the requirements. While that is one of the requirements, the question to be asked is that how it is being produced today? So if there is somebody who's not producing it that way, is there any check? Is there any kind of control that is exercised? If there is no control that is exercised, these women really will not receive what is really due to them. A lot of what is due to them is going to people who may be using power looms. So this is just an example. That brings me to the end of what more needs to be done. In my opinion, at workplaces, what is needed to be done is good mentorship. I think for women, it is very important, especially women who start up as freshers who come into an organization. They need to be guided well, and they need to be made fearless. They need to be made somebody who believe that they are a person and not a woman, and they can walk into any kind of gathering and speak without fear and make their points. And as Professor Bharti said, women definitely bring in fresh perspectives, different perspectives, and very good right-brained perspectives often, which are helpful in the advancement of an organization. And these soft skills are very important. Organizations must also make constructive policies for women. I remember when I had started my journey in K&S Partners, there were days when I would sit back late in the office all by myself. There would be just an office boy, but the office always made sure that I was brought back by a known cab. And that actually took care of a big worry in my head living in Delhi, which is not a very safe place as a young girl, and having to go all the way to East Delhi from South Delhi in the night. So these kind of policies that the organization makes can really help women. And so many times we suffer from unconscious biases. We need to change these unconscious biases into conscious choices. So many times there is this perception that women may not be good for litigation. So that bias should be broken by interviewing more women candidates. You may find some meritorious and some not meritorious. And there are many meritorious women who are, excellent litigators. And of course, policies, should not remain as lip service. It should not just remain on the wall. These should be, conversations in the corridors, and these should be reinforced and, made as a culture of any organization if women have to thrive. So in short, what I am trying to say is that we should create an ecosystem for gender parity. And it is not just one thing, it is many things. It is the shift of the mindset. It is introduction of the policies. It is being empathetic, and it is mentorship. That's all I have to say.
Thank you so much, ma'am. We could actually relate a lot with whatever you said. We now proceed to the question answer round. If any person has a question, they can put in the chat box. By the time we have received a few questions, I'll ask first we have is that how can we ensure that intellectual properties do not hinder access to essential goods such as medicines or education for women in the developing countries? Either of you. Sunanda ma'am or Latha ma'am.
Yeah, Latha, why don't you take that up?
So I don't know what the person who asked the question had in mind, how intellectual property would hinder access
They
to.
would not hinder. How can we ensure that intellectual property rights do not hinder access to essential goods and services such as medicines or education for women in developing countries?
I think that's a question more related to patent laws. And I'm not a patent lawyer. I don't know if Sunanda, would you want to take that up? I mean, it would need some understanding of, healthcare patents and what
Yeah.
are the impediments.
So I would ideally want the question to be reframed because um, to me, I need to know a bit more about what was in the mind of the person when that question was actually put. How can the IP regime help greater access to goods? Is that the question, or my understanding? Because that is what I am beginning to understand with the question.
Same thing. How can IP ensure access to essential goods specifically to women?
Yeah. So for that question, uh, I think is moving on the presumption that there is a disparity insofar as access to goods is concerned, uh, IP goods is concerned, between men and women. You are moving on that presumption, uh, which to me does not appear to be the case. As in, if a certain IP good or IP product is available, is it is likely to be available to both men and women equally. And if it is not available, it is likely to be beyond the reach of both the genders. So there is no I uh, cannot possibly link this access to medicine with access to IP goods with gender as such. So, and that is why I would ideally want something more on an elaboration on the question. I need the person to deconstruct it for me as to what
Maybe give an
was in
example.
the. Yeah.
Maybe give an
Ma'am, I'll,
example. Yeah.
ma'am,
It's,
by the time we'll proceed to the next question then, what are the unique challenges which are faced by the women entrepreneurs and inventors in protecting their intellectual property rights?
Yeah. So one of the challenge which I can clearly cite is because of their inability, uh, and why there is a lack of ability also has a long history. There's a history, there is a background attached to that as well. What I was trying to say was, because of their inability uh, to understand the nitty-gritties of say the procedural formalities. Say, when if I'm applying for a certain patent, okay, and I am not from the science, I do not have any science background, okay, so I'm unlikely to have the understanding of the whole system of patents, or how patent protection actually works. How am I expected to fill in that application? Okay, so uh, there has to be a service provided there by the intellectual property office, which helps me in understanding the nuances involved, so that I'm not left to the mercy, or uh, to the to charity, basically, to sympathy of the whole system. Okay, that somebody can suddenly come and help me out with, or in the hope that somebody would help me. uh, these help mechanisms have to be institutionalized, is what I mean to say. And it's not that it has not been done across the globe. Japan, for instance, I distinctly remember the Japan IP office, and now recently WIPO also, the Korean Intellectual Property Office, they have special mechanisms uh, to which even provide financial support, for patent applications put in by women, and apart from offering training and networking opportunities. So we need to basically ensure, and all these things, they have to be an essential part of ease of doing business, right? So and it starts from the very basic. Say, if I have invented something, I need to, and I want a patent for it, and I have no clue as to how I should proceed. uh, you know there has to be some help offered, institutional help offered. I should not be left to the mercy of people who might take, out of sympathy, or take pity on me or my cause, or left to um, I should not be left to fetch and fend for myself. It's a huge challenge for many of us, many of the female inventors. Yeah.
And the next question is, are there any good practices or policy practices which are there for the protection of fashion or traditional cultural expressions or traditional knowledge, which are traditionally women-oriented industry, like, or women-centric? Any practice or policy that you might be aware of?
Inside IP?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
I mean, there are laws to protect these things. I mean, you could protect novel designs. You can protect if it's something that is worthy of protection as a GI, it can be protected as a GI. But there aren't any kind of specific, rules or policies for these that I am aware of.
Yeah. So if I may add, again, some good practices was the question. Some good practices in the context of TK and TCE, right?
Yes.
Now, see, to think of good practices within the IP fold in the context of TK and TCE is, I think, in my assessment, a very far-fetched, notion. Why? Because TK and TCE uh, as such, as we understand traditional knowledge and traditional cultural expressions, they are practices that are a part of that have become a way of life for communities, right? And they separately do not have any. We do not have any separate standalone independent laws protecting TK and TCE. So, as I said in my narrative also, uh, in order for a certain practice, or in order for a certain traditional cultural expression to be protected within the under the IP umbrella, you have to basically find ways and means. First of all, struggle and find ways and means as to where this particular practice can be accommodated, right? So yes, a bit of it can be protected under the GI regime. There is a bit that can be protected under the patent regime. So you have to basically uh, surf the entire IP umbrella in order to, uh, to look for that niche, that crevice wherein you can fit your um, uh, traditional knowledge or traditional cultural expressions. So, uh, good practice, as I said, we I cannot think of any good practice. But first of all, in the first place, we need to have a certain policy framework, at least, if not a law, in place in order to, in the context of TK and TCE. Only then we can think of some good practices. For the time being, everything is left to the mercy of the system. The moment a certain practice catches the fancy of the system finds ways and means to protect it. Otherwise, it's there, out there, uh, in the unprotected state, susceptible of being exploited by all and sundry. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. I guess that was our last question. We now proceed to the last leg. As we celebrated today the World IP Day on the theme of women in IP, accelerating innovation and creativity, we indeed had a very good discussion, and we come to a conclusion that there is indeed a better representation of women in the STEM field, especially with respect to the few challenges what ma'am discussed. And as there are two sides of the coin where beneficiaries are women who are in the field inventing or entering into a creative domain, and there are also those who are benefited from IP. So IP indeed has a potential to make a great social impact, and by incentivizing more participation and contributing of women to innovate more or to create more, it does cause a ripple effect. With that, we come to the closure. I am filled with gratitude and joy. I would like to express my heartfelt thanks to all of you who have contributed to make this event a success. I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to Professor Dr. Sunanda Bharti ma'am and Ms. Latha Nair ma'am, who have taken out their time from the busy schedule. Your presence have truly inspired our students and lots of speakers, and you are fearless IP leaders who have given motivation to excel in our endeavors. We are grateful to our Honorable Professor Dr. V.C. Vivekanandan sir. He is our and my personal IP guru. And I'm, as a proud student, I thank you, sir, for believing in us and providing this with a platform to us and forever motivating us. I would also like to express my sincere appreciation and towards the organization team, Ms. Debmita ma'am and Amitesh sir. Thank you everyone for being there with us. With permission of VC sir, can I close this event? Sir,
Thank you so
sir.
much.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
ma'am.
For joining.
Thank you.
Good
Thank
night.
you. Yeah. Good night, all.
Good night.
Thank you.